Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli, the computer guy, here for the Daily Blob, where we say, well, I guess at least they're being honest about it. I mean, that's a positive, I suppose. So anyways, today I want to be talking about Anthropic. Anthropic has actually put out an article about Claude and how Claude is being used by hackers so that they can vibe code attacks against your systems. So yeah, Anthropic, who creates Claude Code, which apparently is great. I haven't heard a lot of snark about Claude Code. Apparently it's a wonderful thing. But yeah, hackers are using it to attack folks. And Anthropic thought it was a good idea to write a paper talking about how hackers are using Claude Code to vibe code attacks against folks. I don't know. This is just so 2025. This is just so 2025. Hey, have you heard how good our product is at destroying things? Oh, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, this comes from Anthropic itself. Detecting and countering misuse of AI, August 2025. Came out August 27th, a couple of days ago. So again, to be clear, this is from Anthropic. This isn't from TechCrunch. It's not from Wired. It's not from The Verge or any of that. This is from the robotic horse's mouth. We've developed sophisticated safety and security measures to prevent the misuse of our AI models. Apparently, they're not very good, because the rest of this is where you explain how your models have been misused. That's what I love about these Silicon Valley companies. They're like, we're doing so good. Let us explain to you all of our problems. That's okay. But cyber criminals and other malicious actors are actively attempting to find ways around them. Today, we're releasing a report that details how. Good job. Our threat intelligence report discusses several recent examples of Claude being misused, including a large-scale extortion operation using Claude Code, a fraudulent employment scheme from North Korea, and the sale of AI-generated ransomware by a cyber criminal with only basic coding skills. We also cover the steps we've taken to detect and counter these abuses. We find that threat actors have adapted their operations to exploit AI's most advanced capabilities. Specifically, our report shows agentic AI has been weaponized, AI has lowered the barriers to sophisticated cybercrime, and cybercriminals and fraudsters have embedded AI throughout all stages of their operations. Isn't that nice? Hackers are using AI the way these AI companies want AI to be used throughout their entire system. This includes profiling victims, analyzing stolen data, stealing credit card information, and creating false identities, allowing fraud operations to expand their reach to more potential targets. Vibe hacking, how cybercriminals used Claude Code to scale a data extortion operation. The threat. We recently disrupted a sophisticated cybercriminal that used Claude Code to commit large-scale theft and extortion of personal data. The actor targeted at least 17 distinct organizations, including healthcare, emergency services, and government and religious institutions. Rather than encrypt the stolen information with traditional ransomware, the actor threatened to expose the data publicly in order to attempt to extort victims into paying ransoms that sometimes exceeded $500,000. The actor used AI to what we believe is an unprecedented degree. Claude Code was used to automate reconnaissance, harvesting victims' credentials, and penetrating networks. Claude was allowed to make both tactical and strategic decisions, such as deciding which data to exfiltrate and how to craft psychologically targeted extortion demands. Claude analyzed and exfiltrated financial data to determine appropriate ransom amounts and generated visually alarming ransom notes that were displayed on victims' machines. So yeah, that's what one criminal used Claude Code for. Another incident, remote worker fraud, how North Korean IT workers are scaling fraudulent employment with AI. The threat, we discovered that North Korean operatives have been using Claude to fraudulently secure and maintain remote employment positions at U.S. Fortune 500 technology companies. This involved using our models to create elaborate false identities with convincing professional backgrounds, complete technical and coding assessments during the application process, and deliver actual technical work work once hired. These employment schemes were designed to generate profit for the North Korean regime in defiance of international sanctions. This is a long-running operation that began before the adoption of LLMs and has been reported to the FBI. So basically, there's sanctions against North Korea and North Koreans. One of the ways they make money from the Western world is basically in this remote work environment. They get their employees or their people to be hired as employees remotely, and then they just say that the people are in different places, and then that money comes into the North Korean regime. So you can use Claude Code to do that too. They even give the graphics. They even give beautiful graphics on how the communication goes. Let's see here. And then the final one, no-code malware selling AI-generated ransomware as a service. The threat, a cybercriminal used Claude to develop, market, and distribute several variants of ransomware, each with advanced invasion capabilities, encryption, and anti-recovery mechanisms. The ransomware packages were sold on internet forums to other cybercriminals for $400 to $1,200 USD. So basically, Claude Code was used to develop, market, and distribute ransomware. Let's see here. If we go down here, next steps for Anthropic. In each of the cases described above, the abuses we've uncovered have informed updates to our preventative safety measures. We have also shared details of our findings, including indicators of misuse with third-party safety teams. We're committed to continually improving our methods for detecting and mitigating these harmful uses of our models. We hope this report helps those in industry, government, and wider research communities strengthen their own defenses against the abuse of AI systems. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. For the past 2 years, 3 years, we have been hearing about AI safety. AI safety, AI safety, AI safety. And nobody will shut up about AI safety. And when you think about AI safety, what would you think about AI safety, right? Being able to create chemical weapons. I would think that would be bad for AI safety. All of these other types of things. But no, what do we get? What do we get out of these AI companies? We are told time and time again that safety is their number one priority. So by God, they will not misgender anybody. If you try to misgender somebody using an AI system, you will get smacked and your account might get banned because that is not safe. And to be clear, don't misgender people. Don't. But the point that I try to bring up with this is we have heard so much about AI safety. And then when they actually talk about what AI safety is, it's all these DEI things. Don't do that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying do it. But that's, again, if you have Word, right? If you have Word and you type in something horrible, right? That's not hacking the system. Right? That's what you can use Word to do. Again, that's with all these technology systems. Can you use them to say horrible things? Yes. Is that a safety concern? Highly questionable there. But the funny part is we find is after all of this focus on AI safety, that hackers are literally using AI systems to commit massive cyber attacks. And you're like, oh, Lord, what the hell is wrong with these people? Anyways, what is my takeaway from this? I do find it interesting that they're talking about this. One of the big arguments that I've always made is that hacking ain't that big a deal, right? All hacking is, at the end of the day, is simply using systems in essentially undocumented ways of using the system. Right? You're not just supposed to copy and paste a database and put it somewhere. You're not supposed to encrypt the database in situ or where it stays where it's at. That's not what's supposed to happen. It's supposed to back up the database and then encrypt it. Right? Anyways, if you look at hacking, all hacking is just normal technology skill set, and you're doing things essentially in undocumented ways to do things. That's what hacking is. And so it is curious with these new AI-powered coding systems out there, the idea of cyber criminals or hackers or whoever else basically sitting down and asking these AI systems to essentially compromise systems or interact, or I wouldn't even say compromise. I would simply say interact with other systems in undocumented ways. And I think what's going to be very interesting with this, with the whole idea of them trying to crack down on it, is how do you really crack down on these types of things? What is the difference between a backup regime or a disaster recovery regime and an extortion regime at the end of the day? Right? If you look at a lot of the things that they're doing, like what is the difference between somebody in Portugal trying to clean up their resume and look good to get hired by an American company versus a North Korean trying to clean up their resume and look good for a North American company, right? If you actually take a look at the things that are occurring, the steps and the processes that are occurring, they're very, very similar. What I think we're going to get with this, something to be concerned about, is I think most of these public-facing LLMs, we are going to start getting more and more of a push to identify the users of the LLM. Essentially, the idea being, we now see this with porn laws in the United States, right? We have a lot of the right-wing states right now that they want you to submit your government ID if you want to see boobs. If you want to see boobs, you should show us your driver's license. And they don't seem to grasp well, that might be a slippery slope to go down. But anyways, that's the slope the right-wingers in the United States want to go down. I think once you start seeing more and more of these attacks and more of this becoming public, I think there's going to be more of a push by governmental organizations essentially to de-anonymize the users of these AI systems. So if something is compromised down the pike and they're able to backtrack where maybe there were queries done with Claude, it'll be easier to point back to the actual user who did this. The problem is going to be is that currently our politicians are just dumb as rocks when it comes to technology, right? Because that sounds right. Hey, if you want to use these powerful, if you want the freedom, that's why I always love it, if you want the freedom to use these powerful AI systems, you should be willing to hand over your identification. The problem that you're going to run into with this is essentially the legitimate users are going to hand over their identification and they're going to get tracked to high hell and back. And think about all the things you plug into an AI system. And think about all of that, right? If you can truly de-anonymize the user, right? And you start asking questions of the AI. One of the big things these AI companies want out of you is they want you to ask the AI everything. Everything from how to code a Python loop to, I don't know, if your penis doesn't get as hard as fast as you would like it, to whether or not you should get a cat or a dog, right? All of that stuff, they want that going into AI. And think about all of the information then that's going to be collected about you. Every random ass question that you're thinking about is now going to be under your account that has now been de-anonymized. And then again, there's going to be a big question of who's going to be able to get access to that. And the curious part with this too, where we run into problems, is if you know anything about like Ollama. So Ollama is an LLM framework that you can install onto your own system, right? So you can install Ollama and almost any model you want onto your own computer locally. It does not phone home, right? You don't need to have any internet connection. So essentially what's going to happen is the criminals are going to use the localized LLM services in order to create these attacks. They're not going to get tracked, right? Because the government isn't going to know how to track them, where all of the legitimate AI users are going to get tracked to high hell and back. And I don't know, that just seems on par for 2025. So I think that's going to be happening. I think the de-anonymizing of the internet is something that is coming very quickly. Government level de-anonymizing of the internet. The other thing to be thinking about with this too is one of the concepts in security. I'm not saying it's a good concept in security, but it is the concept that's been around in the cybersecurity world for 40, 50 years, is the whole idea of security through obscurity, right? Is if your company is so small, if your company doesn't have a big plane for folks to be able to attack, the idea is maybe you will be under the radar of the hacker. hackers, right? The hackers will go after the Fortune 500 companies. The hackers will go after those type of companies. But you're safe simply through obscurity. Hackers don't even know to go after you. I think one of the interesting things in the cybersecurity world that's going to become very concerning over the next couple years, maybe 6 months really, is basically AI can do things so quickly. What once was obscure can now be basically made, transparent relatively easily, and people and these hackers and these AI systems might be able to find vulnerabilities in your systems that simply nobody had ever even simply thought to exploit before. So that might be a major vector for attack against a lot of companies, and it'll be curious to see where that goes in the future. I think about this like with industrial systems. So one of my old sponsors, when I did a daily blog back in the day, live daily blog back in the day, one of my sponsors is called Phoenix Electronics, I think it was. Anyways, they deal with industrial automation. Right, so basically computers, literally for robots, right, automated systems in factories. One of the interesting things, they were my sponsors, and I actually went and I saw their headquarters and I saw their equipment and all that kind of thing. But all their stuff was very specialized. So although it was using known communication protocols and known, like it wasn't proprietary system. Most of it wasn't proprietary stuff. It was known, it was public, but most of us just simply don't have experience with that. I forget what protocol they use. They didn't use the normal TCP/IP protocol. They used a different protocol in order to make the systems interact with each other. They used different things, right? And so there is some security there by obscurity, right? If a hacker hasn't been trained on the network protocols that a factory is using, then they're not necessarily going to know how to find the vulnerabilities in those systems. If they don't understand how the clients and the servers interact, or if it is it a client-server architecture? Is it an application-server architecture? Is it a service-oriented architecture? They don't really understand the architecture of the systems for how things are communicating. Again, it's much harder to attack. What becomes interesting now is with these AI systems, if you go, oh, I know there's a factory about 10 miles away and I don't like them for whatever reason, you can actually now sit down with AI and actually try to figure out ways of compromising systems that you don't fundamentally understand. All you care is that you compromise them and take them the fuck down. And so I think there's going to be a lot more threat from these cyber criminals and wannabe hackers going after a lot of systems that seem to basically, ride under the radar previously. So I think that's going to be a big thing out there. I think a lot of this, I argue there's this whole push like, oh, cybersecurity. Oh, Eli's saying we need more cybersecurity professionals. No, we just need more good administrators. Again, back when I got my MCSE and all that, good security and good administration went hand in hand. I was more worried about my fucking employees than I was about some North Korean hacker. And here's the thing, if you can protect your employees from doing stupid crap on your systems, then the wannabe hackers out there are probably not going to get into your systems. The reality is so many systems nowadays are just so inherently vulnerable, literally to the point I would argue it's gross negligence. If a major hospital goes down because of ransomware, if a major organization that deals with people goes down because of ransomware, I honestly, in my heart of hearts, believes a CIO or CTO should rot in fucking jail for a year. You start making CIOs rot in jail for a year for their gross negligent failures, and I think you're gonna see a lot of changes. But we don't see that, right? Again, that's one of the big things with ransomware, right? So it's curious, like when you deal with a database system, right? So when you hear about ransomware going after database systems, one, you should have a backup. Where the fuck is your disaster recovery plan? If ransomware can take down your server, right? A tornado can take down your server. A flood can take down your server, right? I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. A biblical flood can come out of nowhere and take down your server. If your one server can be encrypted and everything is gone, that means you are an abject failure as a CIO, a CTO. It should be considered gross negligence. You personally should be sued into a fucking cardboard box and then thrown in jail for a year so you can think about things, right? But anyways, so one thing, right, if the system can be encrypted like that, then it means you don't have a disaster recovery plan. Where the fuck is your dad's disaster recovery plan? The next thing to be thinking about too is that with a lot of these ransomware attacks, right, so basically you have a server, right? You have a server. On that server is the database, relational database management system. So we have some kind of database management system, and that's the software that runs the database services. And then there's a file. Generally, there's a file. Maybe there's multiple files, depending on the database you're dealing with. Basically, there's a file, and that file is the database itself. And so in the database management server software, you create all of these security privileges. So they're called privileges, at least in the MySQL world, they're called privileges. And so whether people can alter tables, whether people can drop tables, whether people can create tables, right? Those are basically security privileges. So if people are coming into the database how they're supposed to come into the database, they have a certain set of permissions they're allowed to do on that database. And that prevents something called injection attacks. Injections are where you inject into the database itself and you start fucking with things. Well, here's the thing. It's a file. It's a file. So you can put all these privileges, set all that stuff up on the file. But if a hacker is able to simply come in through the normal file system, right? C/etc/my database is here, or whatever the hell else, right? If they're able to see that file, they can simply encrypt that file. None of those privileges for people coming into the system matter anymore because you've just encrypted the file. So if you don't have proper file security, file system security on your server, again, that's where you get dorked too. And so I think one of the big things we need to be thinking about right now is how can we improve the basic administration of our systems? If a ransomware attack can take your systems down, so can a fucking tornado, right? Because that's, everybody wants to, I talk about that, the story, they want to place themselves in their own story, right? So if you hear a CIO or a CTO and they're crying these fucking crocodile tears, right? I can't believe this happened. I can, you're fucking worthless. You're a piece of shit CIO that should sit in jail for a year. But they're crying, right? We were hacked. The thing is, they're not going to bring up the fact that if they had gotten hit by a tornado, the same fucking thing would happen. If they got hit by a flood, the same thing would happen. If they got hit by a fire, the same thing would happen. If they got hit by a terrorist attack, the same thing will happen, right? They make the story be those hackers. So anyways, this is the kind of stuff that you need to be thinking about because, yeah, it will get worse, right? When the equivalent of Claude can be run on individual systems, and then you can actually build out a hacking infrastructure, right? Okay, figure out what ports are open. If these ports are open, what services are most likely running on the servers? If those services, right, what are the vulnerabilities for those particular services? Okay, attack those particular vulnerabilities. Okay, what's the response it gets back? Depending on the response that you get back, then do this and this and this and this. Yeah? Automating these hacking attacks is going to become ever more trivial, and so it's important. It's important you have those layers of security, right? The idea with security, right? If you're not a piece of crap CIO that should be rotting in jail for the next year, right now, right? The idea is that it should be layers. You should be able to put your global administrator username and password on a fucking bulletin board in the middle of New York, and it shouldn't matter. Because the only way those usernames and passwords could actually be used is if they're internal to the network at specific workstations that are able to use those things, right? So many of the problems that we see in the modern world is you literally have global administrators checking their email while logged into the global administrator account, right? When you're logged in especially to Windows, when you're logged into Windows, right, you get all the permissions for whatever your account level is when you log in. If you click a malware attack, right, if there is a spear phishing attack and you click on that, it will be able to run at the privilege level you are currently logged in at. So if you're logged in as a normal fucking user, most of the malware will fail the hell out because it's not able to do a damn thing, right? If you have set up your user accounts so that the average user can't even install a damn printer, then when the malware tries to trigger, it's most likely not going to do anything, right? If you're logged in as a global administrator and you click it, it's going to have all of your privileges and can just devastate not just your computer because it's a global administrator account, but every computer within that domain. So anyways, there's some things to ponder. There's some things to ponder. There's some things to think about. What do you think about Anthropic coming out and talking about how Claude is literally being used for massive hacking attacks? What do you think they can realistically do about this, right? If you look at hacking as simply using systems in non-traditional ways, what do you functionally think they can really do to prevent hackers from using their systems? Seriously. Does it not seem the only potential concept for security is a whole idea of de-anonymizing users so you can track back actions to individual people? What do you think about the government going after that while the real hackers just download a llama and come up with their own models and stuff? What do you think about these CIOs not spending a year in jail? I don't know. Put your thoughts down below. Give us a thumbs up, give us a thumbs down. Say I'm amazing. Say I'm an idiot. It doesn't matter. It's modern world of YouTube. All that matters is that interaction. So just say it down below. And with that, see y'all later.